Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. So Goran has made it very easy for me to open my talk because in response to my question, I think the point he was making is that the future of code generation is going to be interaction of humans and machines. And this is very similar to the main spirit of my talk. Please meet AI, our dear new colleague. In other words, can scientists and machines truly cooperate? For me, it all has started with a wake-up call when I was the ACL PC chair in 2018. So at that time, we have received 1.8 thousand submissions to ACL, and we thought, oh God, it's 300 more submissions than the previous year. What are we going to do? And while I was the PC chair, I started realizing that there is a big change process upcoming because the number of submissions is growing and the demographics of our community is changing towards younger researchers. There are all sorts of issues around scientific work and the use of AI in scientific work. And at that point, it was that I started my own research in this area. Of course, after I finished the PC chair job, which was a huge one. And then a second wake-up call happened like a year ago in August 24. So at that time, the system AI Scientist has been published, which led to a lot of discussion in the scientific community, and I'm going to come back to it in a minute. And last but not least, there's the third wake-up call just about 3 weeks ago. I have checked LinkedIn, and then I see something that leads me to think, am I becoming obsolete? So is my job going to disappear? So what have I seen? I've seen this call for paper, open conference of AI agents for science 25, where AI serves as both primary author and reviewer of research papers. And if I did not know personally people behind this, I would think this is fake news, right? Unfortunately, it is not. I mean, maybe fortunately, I really don't know what my sentiment is at this point. So what is it about? Agents for Science is the first venue where AI authorship is not only allowed, but required, enabling open evaluation of AI-generated research and the development of guidelines for responsible AI participation in science. Right? Sounds all great. And just in case, so there has been a tutorial today in the morning, so there's a lot of students interested in this, so just in case, you still have a chance either to submit a paper by September the 5th, or even propose an automatic review generation system, then you have a bit more time until the end of September, right? So just think about the time. Everything goes very fast. You submit a paper, in 3 weeks, you already have your AI-generated reviews, and the conference is going to happen in October. And as I said, I mean, they are not paying me for this. It's a real thing, guys. Wake up. So these are people from Stanford mainly, and some of you, if you submit to iClear, you may know the iClear review agent. So this is the same person behind it, James Zhu. And if you think about it, the speed of development in this area is just incredible. Just a year ago, in August 24, as I said, it was the first time they published AI Scientist that this topic has become so present. So what is AI Scientist? It is the first comprehensive system for fully automatic scientific discovery enabling large language models to perform research independently, by the way, in the domain of machine learning, right? Not any research, but in machine learning. And there's been a lot of discussion that was kicked off when this system was published, so it's really big news, and I think it's impressive. And what does it actually do? So AI scientist is in the domain of machine learning, and it automates, and this is something that impressed me because it's an end-to-end system for the entire research life cycle. So previously, of course, there have been many automations of particular steps, but here you have a full cycle, generating novel ideas, writing code, executing experiments, summarizing experimental results, writing the paper in a scientific manuscript, and then also introducing an automatic peer review, generating feedback and looping this into the idea generation process. And all of this at a cost of approximately, as they claim, $15. Okay, so guys, that's really a big message. So at this point, for me, the new era of AI systems for research begins, and it's not a long time ago, but we already see a lot of similar systems proposed by different research groups and industrial stakeholders. And of course, in this community, there's an obvious question: is this paper perfect? Of course, it's not. And Nature has followed up on this with an analysis, and they find a lot of flaws. Papers by AI scientists are incremental. Probably they would be rejected by human editors. Those papers present reductive view of research. Why is it so? Because research is a social process. That's why you can here and join this summer school, right? So we talk to each other, we brainstorm. It's an interactive social process. AI scientists cannot do it, at least yet. So that's why it's reductive. It's not reading social media where a lot of news is published nowadays and so on. And of course, it suffers from different biases. For example, citations based on the popularity bias. There's a lot of criticism, and it's fair criticism that can be applied at this point, but we all know that technology is getting better. Now, the question they ask is, what is the role of a scientist in this future world? And well, they picture the world that is actually happening now, a year later, of a fully AI-driven scientific ecosystem, including not only LLM-driven researchers, but also reviewers, area chairs, and entire conference. So this is Agents for Science, right? So the recent wake up call. At the same time, they claim that the role of a human scientist will not be diminished. This is similar to the claims in code generation. So the software developer is going to become even more important, just to take off the anxiety of the people. Now, the question is, so this development is already reality. It's entering our life in various ways. I see also students using these tools. Now, how can we embrace this development in a productive and constructive way? And this is the question: where could human and AI scientists meet? We know that AI and human have different skills, right? So AI can do a lot of repetitive work. AI is good at tasks that require combinatorial skills. AI will never complain about something being boring, and AI may be purely be necessary. For example, if there are 100 ideas, but the human can only work on the 2 of them. And the human has in-depth intuition of the topics. It is still better at reasoning, especially experiential reasoning of senior researchers, and the humans are trained in a scientific workflow and understanding of the research process. So what is actually the scientific workflow? A closer look shows it consists of several stages. Of course, you can break it down in various ways, but here, for the purpose of illustration, I have three main stages: idea generation, that involves tasks like related work analysis, concept clarification, theory building, and hypothesis generation. The second big stage is experiment iteration, where we formulate research questions, design and execute experiments, analyze results, and refine the hypothesis. And finally, paper writing and publishing. This involves drafting scientific manuscripts, peer review, rebuttals, and revisions. And this is what I'm going to focus on, mainly in my talk, because text is, of course, very close to all of us working in natural language processing. Also, writing the paper is kind of, very laborious task that many people do not enjoy. So there is a lot of potential for NLP techniques to be useful to support this process. Now, as I said, there are these different tasks that we consider: writing, review, rebuttal, and revision. And in individual steps, we already see that despite big resistance in research communities, some things start being adopted. So I already mentioned the iClear reviewing agent that's going to be deployed this year as well. And the AAAI community goes forward. So this is the first I know of these more traditional established ones. And they're going to provide an automatically generated review in addition to 3 human reviews. So they are not replacing, they are not combining, that they are providing this as an additional source of information, which I find very courageous. Very impressive step to go forward with this. And in my talk, I'm going to describe some of the work that we have done in this area, where AI is used as a tool to help writing scientific papers. And finally, I will outline a vision for the future where AI is going to be our collaborator and colleague. But before all of this, we, of course, need data, both in AI as a tool and AI as a collaborator. So collecting data in this area is very, very hard. And this is why there is a big gap between wake up call number 1 and wake up call number 2. So it took me many years to collect the data set in the domain of peer review. There are many things that happen: writing, peer reviewing, rebuttal, and revision. But what we actually see is only the final manuscript. And this is what is under, in our community, free copyright. So this we can use for research. But these other tasks require other data, which is confidential and which is highly sensitive. So most of this data is hidden. And we want to answer questions: how people draft papers, how people revise them, how people write peer reviews or discuss papers. But in order to do so, we need to collect these types of data. And in this discussion with the community, there were a lot of ethical concerns raised, and they are very valid and important. For example, how to collect this data, how to maintain confidentiality and privacy. Imagine a peer review talking about some ideas from an unpublished manuscript. It's not enough if the author of the review will give us a consent to use that review, right? Because it talks about the ideas of the third party. So we actually also need the consent of that party. And then how to license, how to copyright, who owns the reviews, who owns the drafts, and how can we redistribute this data. And of course, we want to have open data sets. I mean, I'm curious about this research topic, but I'm sure many people in the audience are curious too. So we want to share this data under a clear research license. And since we live in Germany, we don't want to violate any laws. And we don't want to unethically use people's data or leak confidential information. So our lab has proposed different solutions to address this. So the first is the donation-based data collection workflow that we apply to ARR. And the second is a fine-grained expert workflows. And of course, there are many more sources of data, like open data sources, for example, that can be used in addition. Now let me talk a bit about our solutions. So the first solution is collecting the data from the reviewing platform. In our case, this is Open Review. And there I always get this question, so why don't you just crawl what is public? Of course we do. Nowadays it's possible because Open Review has introduced the terms of service, but back then they did not have it, so it took a couple of years to negotiate this, but now they have it still. The data is public, but it's not diverse, right? So we know that our NLP approaches are sensitive to domains, and the public data is available mainly in Europe and iClear, but for example, for the ACL community, the review data is not public. So we want to have a diverse data set, though. And what we propose here is that similar to the medical domain, we ask people to donate their data, and that allows us to put a clear license on the resulting data set. And we have started this initiative. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with it. We launched this data donation workflow in 2021, and it's based on top of the Open Review and ACL rolling review, and we continuously collect data from the community and the members who are willing to contribute. So this workflow is quite complicated because, as I have hinted, there are different stakeholders like authors, reviewers, program committees, and so on, from which we collect the consent. And there are different levels of security associated with this data. So some of it is public, some of it is protected. And all of this is described in EMNLP 22. And the resulting data set has not only ARR, we also had previous pilot attempts to collect data from other venues like polling, for example, and open science venues like F1000. So we have a data set which is multi-domain and multi-year and is fully ethically and legally sound and available for research in this area. It has been used widely already for a wide variety of tasks like paper revision assistance, review analysis, reviewing assistance, and analyzing the peer review data from different communities and different time periods in comparative ways. So the effort continues, and recently we also revised the data donation workflow, which has been approved by the ACL Ethics Committee and the Publication Ethics Committee. So we have recently released the second version of this data set, which includes most recent data from 24 and 25, and importantly, for the first time, it also includes meta reviews and author responses, because previously we were not able to collect this data, but now it has been allowed to collect this data, and this will enable novel studies that relate to support of meta reviewing and the support of rebuttals. Also, we include more open reviewing platforms like PLOS, for example. And an important property of this data set is that it avoids data contamination, which, as you know, is a pervasive problem in evaluating the abilities of large language models. Why is it so? Because we don't publish the data set online. You can only get it upon request for a dedicated research purpose to help avoid the data contamination problem. So that's the first solution to the data issue. The problem is, while we collect all this data, we still have little insight into how people actually do the peer review and where AI can help in peer review. And here we propose another solution where we deconstruct the work of a peer reviewer into multiple steps. And then we collect interaction data from humans, how they perform peer review. And we analyze where AI can help by having large language models carry out specific steps in this process, conditioned on the input of the human peer reviewers. So this is described in the paper that's going to be presented in ACL 25, Structured Reasoning in Critical Text Assessment for Peer Review and Beyond. And as I said, the main idea is that in the first step, we create a representation of this peer review process consisting of multiple reasoning steps. So how do we derive these steps? We carry out interviews with experienced researchers to model this causal graph where you start basically with a paper, it's in red, and then you go through a set of reasoning steps in this graph and you derive the final verdict, which is an acceptance decision. Should we accept or reject the paper? And this is a causal graph, so the relations between the nodes are causal relations. And we then convert this graph to a questionnaire, basically guiding the human peer reviewer through the process. So we collect this actual peer review interaction data from humans and let large language models answer individual questions in this questionnaire. So this way we collected data based on peer review of 20 papers in the biomedical domain, and we had 40 biomedical researchers who applied this peer review workflow from whom we collected the interaction data, resulting in about 4,000 reasoning steps. And the result is a unique data set to study peer review, where we can study questions such as, can large language models imitate and support experts within these workflows? So this is the first step towards this human AI collaboration, because we can clearly see that LLMs can support some of the questions very well and completely fail on other questions. And all of these investigations are described in the paper. We have a couple of cool findings. For example, we can also in human peer review see that the peer review crucially depends on the background knowledge of the reviewer. There's huge variability in human peer reviews, depending if the person has subject matter expertise in the topic they are reviewing, and so on. So this is about the data, and now I move to the second part. So what do we actually do with this data? We have, just to recap, 4 steps in scientific process. We first write the manuscript, we review the manuscript, then we have rebuttals, that is discussions about this, and then we finally revise. And basically, our lab has produced research results and data sets and models in each step of this complex workflow. Of course, for time constraints, I can only give you an insight into 1 or 2 projects. And the first project is actually a collaboration with UFANG. Here we looked at citation text generation, just to put it in plain words. How can we write a good related work section? So this work is pretty old, what we say old. In our community, it's 1 year old. It is published in the previous ACL. But I think this task is very kind of nice and good to grasp for any researcher. So as I said, citation text generation is basically another term for related work generation. So we all have to do it. It's hard to find people in the audience who really enjoy doing that. So as you know, you need to collect a lot of papers, then you need to cluster them topically, then you need to understand the relations, how are they related to each other, and identify the gap. And this is what makes basically a good related work section, because we want to justify our new approach by figuring out the previous existing works and the research gap. So the question here is, can large language models draft related work sections, and what factors influence their performance? And there have been multiple previous works that looked into related work generation, and one contribution we make here is that we unify the task, because every work has defined it in a different way, for example, on a sentence, paragraph, or a section level. And also the approaches use different input components like the abstract or the neighbor context and citation intent. So there has been no joint study that unifies all the data sets. And we experiment with different instruction methods like chain of thought, role play, or direct instruction, and also with multiple evaluation metrics to establish the performance of large language models in this task. For this, we need use the ACL anthology data set, and we have the citing paper and the cited paper. And we have around 6,000 paragraphs. So our level of work is generating a related work paragraph here with about 13,000 of citations in total. So this is the first systematic approach to task design in citation text generation. And we have these different input components like instructions, abstracts, intents, and examples. We construct a prompt. We use open weights and the GPT models in this experiment, and we apply a wide range of different metrics to evaluate the results. So this is an example basically of the instruction where different parts are our input components, and then we attach the actual data of the current data instance to generate citation text. So one part of this work is also looking at data-driven citation intents. So we use FLAN T5 to derive free-form intents, like to provide an overview of the state of the art, which are much more fine-grained if you compare this to categorical intents that prior work has used in that task. So for example, background maps to a much larger set of free-form intents that allow to capture the intent of the citation at a much more detailed level. The key takeaways from this work is that citation intents, so in our work, fine-grained citation intents that we derived in a data-driven way, and example sentences have positive effect, and joint usage, the more information we provide, the better the output. The free-form intents outperform coarse-grained intents. GPT performs better in instruction following and generates longer outputs. And also we can see various aspects of the system performance by using different evaluation metrics. Now moving to the next stage of the paper writing workflow, the next major stage after writing the draft of the paper is peer review. So here I would just like to highlight that a year ago, a group of researchers has carried out a detailed survey. What can natural language processing do for peer review in a Dachstuhl seminar? So there you can get a very nice overview of the peer review process and different stages before review, during review, after review, and a comprehensive collection of research work around the related natural language processing tasks. So I just briefly discuss one of our recent works in this space, identifying aspects in peer reviews. So here we talk about aspects. So aspects are specific dimensions of the paper that the reviewer is giving a judgment on, and that help us to capture the evaluation of the manuscript overall. So aspect is not an acceptance decision, it's not a summary. So I show an example in a second. And in our work, this is a sentence level labeling task. So basically, the sentence is, the method is innovative and the associated aspects are method and novelty. So it's a multi-label sentence classification. Or another sentence, theoretical substantiation is insufficient. So here there's the aspect theory. So in this work, we use GPT to identify aspects from a corpus of reviews in a data-driven way. So similarly to how we derived citation intents in previous work from citation or related work sections. So here we use large language models to extract the aspects. And then we create a taxonomy of aspects with different levels of granularity. And similar to the previous work, we find that our extracted set of aspects is much more fine-grained as compared to aspects which are traditionally used in reviewing guidelines. So, for example, the aspect novelty can be modeled by our fine-grained aspects of innovation, novelty, and originality. These aspects can be used for different tasks. So one task where this can be applied is meta study of science. So for example, we can see which aspects are important in peer reviews in different tracks of a conference. So here, for example, there is a big similarity in aspects between machine translation and multilinguality, while this is different from resources and evaluation. Another task where we can utilize these aspects is identifying LLM-generated reviews. So this is a big interest in the community right now, as we all know. And we find that human-written reviews are very much dissimilar. So you can see this is much more dark, and LLM-generated reviews are more similar to each other. That means that they lack specificity. So, if we abstract a review to be represented by a set of aspects, this can be a strong feature to filter out LLM-generated reviews. So in our experiments, we can detect 2 or 3 LLM-generated reviews by using this aspect-based representation. So in summary, I've been talking about how we can support writing with the example of related work section writing. And then I've been talking about how we can support reviewing by identifying aspects and using them, for example, to detect LLM-generated reviews. But there are other works that look at different aspects, for example, of AI-assisted peer reviewing, also analyzing discussions to propose an effective rebuttal for reviewer concerns, or for analyzing revisions that are made in the scientific manuscript. So this is one tool I personally want to bring to the community one day to detect how much reviewer comments the author has implemented in the camera-ready version, because we cannot judge it manually, and we all know that occasionally some authors ignore the changes they committed to make. So this is really my personal ambition that in future AI is going to help with this issue. Now let me move to the final part of my talk, where I would like to talk about the future. So far I've been talking about the past. And here we have this vision that AI is going to be our collaborator. So now, to make it more easy to grasp, let's recap AI as a tool writing related work. So we have 3 steps in writing related work. We identify target papers, we define their relationships, and then we write the related work paragraph. And in the joint work with UFAN I presented, we focused mainly on writing related work paragraph. So we all know that large language models produce not so good results in such expert level tasks. So for example, they mix up sources, and also they confabulate or hallucinate depending on which term you like, and also their line of argumentation may be incoherent very often. So what do we do? So we give them an instruction, we receive a draft, and we give them feedback. The paragraph confuses results, so the main paper we decided to paper. Then they revise the passage, and while removing the previous error, they may introduce new errors. For example, now they have introduced new claims which are too broad. And then this feedback loop goes on. Basically, prompt engineering is the major paradigm, and we all know is really annoying, and LLMs very often do not follow our instructions in generating this text artifact. So if you think of writing a peer review, is not much different. So basically this is the same, right? Independent which type of text you want to write. Our vision is that human and AI research agent, even not a single one, but a whole team of humans and agents would work together, bringing their complementary strengths to the team to co-construct the solution. So what is the solution here? Think of this related work section, or think of a peer review, or a draft of your next paper. So solution is an artifact in a broader sense. However, all that glitters is not gold. Often have you heard that told. Nature, 2024, in October, has published a meta-study when combinations of humans and AI are useful as systematic review and meta-analysis. So there are some good news and bad news. So good news, this is an impactful and promising research area. This is I'm happy about. However, they find that actually in many cases AI does not help, and it depends highly on the task and user. So there is very high variability depending who is using the system and for which task. And in our setting, AI for science, the target user group are us, and we consider ourselves experts, right, as opposed to humans in general. So this is not an easy issue. And for this, together with Goran, who's sitting there in the back, and a group of researchers from machine learning, NLP, and data science, we have put forward this position paper that's going to appear soon, but it's available online on arXiv as a preprint, Human AI Solution Co-Construction as Preference-Based Search. So we think this is the next big step in human-centric AI and NLP. So this position paper is about AI research agent, and here we formalize the expert AI cooperation as solving a problem by co-constructing a solution. As I said, a solution can be a text, but it can also be a software program. So it's in a sense domain independent, and the methodology should be applicable to a wide variety of domains, but they should be expert domains. So this work is about expert domains. And we want to develop it into a general framework. So the main idea is that this framework enables co-construction of solutions by an expert and a dynamically adaptive agent who search in a construction space. So there is an explicit space with potential solutions, and we search there, and we use natural language communication with agent integrity by design. So these are the major properties of the framework that is described in detail in this position paper. And when I talk about expert and dynamically adaptive agents, so I talk generally about agents. They can be human or artificial agents, and there can be, of course, more than one agent, though I use just one human and just one agent, AI agent, for illustration. And here's an example of such an expert problem. So just for a change from the related work writing, I have here a software program that is supposed to be written. And this is double pendulum software program. And I'm not a computer scientist by my background, but my colleagues in robotics use it a lot. And they have explained So this is a typical task of an open-end kind of solution co-construction where you can have multiple programs that are valid. So there's no one ground truth program, but the programs may depend on the preferences of the particular expert, the environments, and so on. So this is the artifact that we co-construct. In this example, and now I'm going to highlight the main properties of the framework. So first I said we search in a construction space. So what is actually this construction space? So here you can imagine a huge space, and every point in this space is a program. So it's just a huge space of possible programs, and in this space we search. So what does it mean? So we start with one point, which can be an initial draft produced either by a human or AI agent. And then by utilizing the preferences expressed in this human AI communication, we move from one point to another point, and we measure the quality, we call it utility in the paper, of each solution until we satisfy a given criteria, that is, we have reached the solution of a good utility, right? So similarly to related work sections, you can imagine each point is a related work section, and their quality is evaluated, and we navigate in this explicit space. So this is the differentiator from the current state of the art, which is not artifact-centric, and there is no co-construction and is not focused on expert domains. Now, about the co-construction. So we co-construct this solution by improving the solution iteratively and moving in this space. So we are in one given point, and then we have multiple options how we can move forward. So we need to evaluate these options by measuring their utility. And this is how we decide which one is the best one to move forward. And the quality of this process crucially depends on the quality of our representations. And in this work, we consider multimodal artifacts. So it can be text, it can be code or knowledge graph, images, and so on. And the framework makes some assumptions about the representations for co-constructions that need to be of high quality. And an important point is that the expert can understand and can control the cooperation, because together with the agent, they move from one point to the other point in this space, while state-of-the-art is end-to-end training and neural embeddings that the expert cannot understand. We generate explanations, but often they are not faithful, and so on. And also the state-of-the-art lacks focus in expert domains and multimodal and especially sparse data. So next, natural language communication. So of course, in this audience, we are very happy about it because it makes NLP and computational linguistics important. So we have a versatile dialogue between human and agent, where the agent accommodates the experts. And we have a good dialogue management involving, for example, clarification questions, and also extract the user's preferences using the dialogue, because sometimes they can be implicit in the experts' utterances. And this is different to the current state of the art and dominating paradigm where things are vice versa. That is, the expert needs to adjust our behavior to the behavior of the large language model, where we propose to do it differently. And then the dynamically adaptive agents have memory. They know what happened in the past. They can refer to it and can behave adaptively in comparison to the history of interaction. They have the preference module, encoding the preferences of the experts, and also world and domain knowledge, for example, represented as knowledge graphs. And this gives a principled approach to dynamics of interaction and the integration of preference learning, continual and transfer learning technique, different from the existing state-of-the-art. So finally, agent integrity is a crucial requirement in expert domains. I mean, if you were to use this tool for your scientific products that are used, for example, for promotion decisions, right? So you need to be really sure what this artificial agent is proposing to do. And this is something that our approach has by design, because it's a neurosymbolic approach. So we explicitly navigate in this space by means of a natural language dialogue, and the expert in every step has an understanding what is happening. So this way we are not going to become stupid. But despite large language models, as Goran has made a very good point, we can also learn from them while they can learn from us, and we can enhance our capabilities without losing the skills, though some of the skills may, of course, become obsolete. So this co-construction leads to agent integrity and explainability, and the expert being fully in charge of the produced solution. So we have some ongoing projects that try to implement parts of this framework. So project number 1 is artifact evaluation. If we had time, of course, you will ask this question. So how to measure the utility, that is the quality of the related work section, is a very hard problem, right? Because it depends on the user preferences. So stay tuned. So we are going to propose some concrete results very soon. So the second project is on collaborative reasoning. So if you want to know more, talk to Dhruv. He knows everything because he's the main author leading this project. And the last is preference elicitation for adaptive planning. So this is something about these preferences. As I said, user preferences are extremely important. However, when I start doing some expert task, very often my request to the LLM is underspecified. So we have seen in related work generation that a very detailed instruction is very important to the LLM to produce a good solution. However, very often if I am to solve an expert problem, which is hard, I don't really know which instruction to give, right? So I need to iteratively develop this. So imagine PhD student professor interaction who develop some new approach, right? So they interact a lot and extract preferences from each other, especially PhD students try to extract preferences from professors, and this can be very hard. One reason is the cost is very high because the professor has a limited time, so you need to prioritize your questions, right? So, and this is true for any other expert domains. So there are many more challenges, and I really invite you to join and read this paper. I think there's a big research agenda, which is very exciting, and these questions are technical, safety, and ethics, so of various kinds. So coming back to my first question, can scientists and machines fully cooperate? So what we have seen, so right now, we mainly use AI as a tool, so not really. However, we are making very good steps, though it's difficult, towards true human AI collaboration. And in future, maybe, well, some of our skills may become less important, right? Because we can externalize a lot of work in large language models. However, other skills, so for example, fact-checking the results or checking the code may become more important. I mean, it's not the same as drafting the code, for example. Checking the code is a different skill, so we also need to teach our students these skills. And I hope at the end of the day, this will lead to AI team members extending our horizon. And at this point, thanks a lot to a big team helping to move this vision forward. Also, some of them present here. Thank you very much for your contributions. Yeah, and that's the end. Thank you.